Have a meeting of the Mesa Housing Services Governing Board. Is Mr. Nelson with us today? Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Please come and join us. Jeremy, I think we might, is there a chair next to you? Okay, thank you. Mr. Nelson, thank you for joining us. You are a member along with the council of the Mesa Housing Services Governing Board. We appreciate your service. Ms. Mickelson, are there any requests to speak from the public? Thank you. The first item on the agenda then is the approval of minutes of previous meetings as written. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Luna. And a second for Mr. Glover. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Thank you. The next item on the agenda for this meeting is to hear a presentation and discuss updates to the city's housing choice voucher programs, including utilization, funding, and expenditures. Good to have Liz and Mary with us. Ladies, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us.
Good morning, Chair and Governing Board members. We're here to provide you the quarterly update on the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Prior to the update, we would be requesting from you today to provide an approval to enter into an amendment. It's called the First Amendment to the intergovernmental agreements that we have with the cities of Chandler, the County of Maricopa County, Pinal County, Town of Gilbert, and Town of Queen Creek. As you know, this provides us an opportunity to utilize our vast vouchers in those jurisdictions. It increases housing options for our veterans, and it also makes it much easier for them to be able to lease up in those areas under this IGA. I can share with you that we currently have one veteran leasing in Chandler. We are working with Gilbert, and they are being very helpful in trying to identify units that can be used in Gilbert. And also we have someone who's currently searching in Queen Creek.
I'm sorry, Liz, before you move on to that point, I thought I'd heard, and I know we, historically, the City of Phoenix and the City of Mesa were the only organizations that had the capacity to administer the vast vouchers in the valley.
That's correct.
Did I hear that Maricopa County is acquiring that certification as well?
Chair, actually, it's Maricopa County and City of Tempe now have their vast vouchers allocated to them. And again, this comes directly from HUD. They look at, and the VA, they look at what municipalities have been identifying homeless veterans, and that's how they received additional allocations.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. Well, that leads to my question, which is, do we have an IGA with Maricopa County, and are we, as part of what we're considering today, renewing that IGA? And I guess I'm happy to do that, but if they're administering their own vast voucher program now, is there a reason for us to have an IGA with them on vast vouchers?
I would say there is, because it allows those who are currently in Mesa, let's say we have a veteran currently living in Mesa, but they want to lease in Apache Junction that's on the part of Maricopa County. It allows us to continue to use that voucher and administer it ourselves, rather than having to send them to the Maricopa County office and go through the new paperwork that they would normally do under the program rules. And Maricopa County is more than happy for us to continue to administer that in their jurisdiction, which is a great help to the veteran.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Liz. I was just curious, how many vouchers are available from the other entities or municipalities that you've mentioned?
So, Chair, Councilmember Freeman, I will say I don't know if I have the numbers offhand. We have 191 in total. Tempe got just a few. Oh, Mary, of course, knows. 8 in Tempe and 5 in Maricopa. So they didn't get a heck of a lot, but it's enough for them if they find veterans in their jurisdiction to be able to utilize those.
Thank you. Mr. Luna.
Thank you for presenting. Do you anticipate that in the future that could cut into our voucher program as Maricopa and Tempe expand their program?
Chair and Vice Mayor Luna, they wouldn't cut into ours. We maintain our allocation of 191, and at this point, our VA has said that they don't believe we need more vouchers because we're not fully utilizing what we have right now. If we get to the point where we're fully utilizing, they would look and continue to see if there's any additional veterans in the area that would necessitate another allocation.
This may be part of your presentation that's to follow, so I apologize if I'm undercutting you. But the reason we're not utilizing all of our VASH vouchers, would you say it in large part because of a lack of landlords that are willing to accept them? In other words, do we have VASH voucher recipients that are having trouble finding a place to take advantage of their vouchers?
Chair, I would say that we definitely need landlords. That is no doubt an issue for us today. We have also had a lower number of referrals this year, partly because the eligibility requirements that the VA uses for the VASH program. So the VA has been meeting with HUD and us regionally to talk about is there a way to expand that eligibility criteria, because we still have over 400 veterans on the by name list, and I believe, Mary, there was about 70 that we determined was VA eligible. So there's a need still for these vouchers. We just need to make sure that that they have access to those vouchers based on the eligibility requirements. But in order for us to be able to serve them well, even if they came to us, is to ensure we have landlords working with us.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I think we interrupted you when you're in the middle of your presentation.
I think we just have a few more updates for you here. Do you want to, we can wait till the end if you want to do the approval of the IGA, but I.
Yes, wait, the next item after your presentation is to
Perfect.
consider that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the next slide, I'm going to turn over to Mary to talk about our utilization.
Okay, our utilization is doing really well again this year. And so this slide shows it's the actual, including the estimate through the end of 2018. We are expecting to, I should go back. The first item is to update is how we're doing in utilization of the funding. It's a calendar year basis, our funding for our utilization and our rents. It looks like we're going to be at 99.25 this year utilized, meaning that we have really maximized all of our vouchers throughout the calendar year. And this also will show will maximize our funding for the HAP, the housing assistance payments, and also it'll maximize our administrative fees that we receive from that.
I think it's important to state that we cannot exceed 100% when we're looking at the units. This is looking at how many units are leased. And so we cannot exceed that 20,580. And that's why you'll never see us over 100%, but we're getting very close to 100%. So 99.25 is as close as you can get when you're managing over 1,600 vouchers every year.
So this is not just VASH vouchers, this is also Section 8 vouchers?
It's all three.
Okay.
And you'll see they're
Mainstream.
divided up here under Housing Choice Voucher, VASH, and Mainstream.
Oh, I see.
And then it shows the total, but the 99.25 is what we look at just on the Housing Choice Voucher, because that's how HUD evaluates us on our report card every year. The VASH and Mainstream, they don't take that into account.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thompson, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Liz, one of the questions I always ask is, when it comes to our veterans, once we get them into housing, how many of those are staying in housing, and how many of them are going on to bigger and better things versus going back to the street? Or do we have veterans that are using the VASH voucher and then they're going back into homelessness for some reason?
Chair, Councilmember Thompson, you know, in all programs, there's a certain level of turnover. The one beauty of the VASH program is the level of support they're getting from the VA, the clinical team. So even if initially they may not be successful or they're encountering problems, the whole point is to provide those wraparound services and continue to support them. There are times where our veterans, for a variety of reasons, are just not being successful, so the VA will continue to determine what's how else they can support them. So we do have some who may not be successful, but those are low numbers. We also have veterans that become very self-sufficient and are able to move on their own. Do you have a percentage of our turnover? I'm sorry, I don't have that percentage, but I will tell you it's definitely in the high 80s based on my recollection. Our housing choice vouchers, it's a little higher, but again, Our veterans have more issues and disabilities related to that, so our turnover is a little higher on the VASH side. That's always been the case with that program, but again, it's because a lot of them are coming from chronic homelessness, so they've been on the streets for a long time, they have a lot of issues, so it's that level of support that is really required. So this program is really good for most of them, and sometimes we find that this program is not enough.
So they're still assigned, excuse me, they're still assigned a navigator, and the navigator stays with them throughout until they're on their feet, or?
Correct. It's not just a navigator, it's primarily a VA clinical, usually a master's social work case manager. And the navigator helps them initially, but it's that VA support that keeps with them until what they do is they'll graduate them once they've kind of completed. But there's an expectation, there's long-term case management for all our veterans in this program.
Thank you.
Okay, the next chart demonstrates the amount of funds that we spend for the housing assistant payments. These are the rental assistance for the voucher holders. We're estimating that we will spend 101% of our HCV. Now, this is total here that you will see here. We're able to exceed 100% on our housing assistant payments as long as we have reserves, and we do have reserves. Also, by maximizing our spending, it impacts how much HUD will fund us for next year. So we're showing that we're spending a little bit more than what they're allocating to us, and that's a good thing because the rents are going up with that. So estimate to date, we're gonna spend $12.3 million for all our vouchers of the 12.5. And the last chart is covering our administrative fees funding that we receive from HUD, which is just over $1 million. These funds are restricted and must be used for our operations only for our programs. It demonstrates the funding is used primarily, you can see for personal services, is for payroll and benefits. It doesn't cover some of the indirect costs, which are covered by our general funds, which would be rent, utilities, HR, upper management, such as Liz. Those are paid from general funds. It does cover our professional services and our commodities and our printing services and supplies and things like that. So it is critical that some of the general funds does help run our programs that we have. And we'll spend about 90% of what we have, which is okay, because we can keep what we don't spend. So we are working closely to stay within our budget.
I'd like to share an event that was recently held in October. It was, we called it the Landlord Seminar. It was geared to reach out to existing and potential landlords. We had over 130 attendees. Of those, approximately 80 of them were landlords. We held it at the Mesa Convention Center. And I want to thank the mayor for coming and speaking, and for some of our other council members that showed up to support us with that. I do want to share that we had great partners, including our own city departments, police with the TriStar program, they provided a presentation. Tax and license was present, animal control, neighborhood outreach, and our code compliance. We also had a presentation by our assistant city attorney, Kelly Gragan, and from our diversity office, Andrea Alicote. And it was a great success, and I do believe we were able to recruit a couple new landlords that have never worked with our program before. So that is our update. I do want to kind of give you a glimpse into 2019, which is coming very rapidly. We will be coming at our next quarterly update to discuss our housing services annual update, which is a requirement by HUD. We also will be rolling out a landlord incentive program. We received funding from Salt River Pima to test and pilot, providing some funding to incentivize landlords to work with us. It also will help support some of our veterans and homelessness, those experiencing homelessness with some fees and costs that aren't covered by our housing program. And we're calling that Increasing Housing Opportunities in Mesa, or iHome. And also in 2019, we're going to continue our focus on outreach to landlords. We still have a tight rental market, and so it's really important that we do as much marketing and outreach as possible. And finally, we'll be bringing you some thoughts and ideas about how we can increase housing options for our veterans. Again, how to identify those units so that they can lease up here in Mesa. Oh, and one last announcement. Last quarterly update, I had announced that we received 28 vouchers for persons with disabilities through the Mainstream program. I can now announce we also received an additional 28 vouchers for the program. It's called Family Unification Program. It's the first time we've received those vouchers, and that will serve those families and homeless youth that are in the Arizona Department of Child Safety. So families that need housing in order to either be reunited with their children, or they're at risk of losing their children if they don't have appropriate housing. And we're working with DCF right now on developing that referral process. And that concludes this presentation.
Thank you. I think the fact that you're receiving more vouchers, you're being humble, that's an indication that the agencies that oversee these programs trust the city of Mesa, and it's an acknowledgement that you're doing a professional job of managing those programs. So I just want to say that we're proud of homelessness is a huge issue, not just in Mesa, Arizona. It's obviously across the country, but I'm proud of the way that our staff and our community has responded to this challenge. So thank you for the great job you're doing. The landlord seminar, I thought I hope that becomes an annual event. It seems like it's much needed in our community. Programs like the community court and the police, the work that Deputy Rain is doing with the way that we interact with our homeless population with the police force, I think is just a model. Can you give us an update on, I know we 4 years ago now, we accepted the challenge to try to accomplish functional zero on veterans homelessness. We've learned that that's a very difficult thing to do, and that there's national organizations that really hold your feet to the fire to make sure you establish a sustainable program. It's not something that's done quickly or without a lot of effort, but I think we've made some meaningful progress, and I think we're working more regionally, perhaps. Can you update us on that program, please?
Yes, Chair, Mayor Giles, I'm very happy to share that there's been significant progress made on along the lines of identifying a by name list. There was well over 700 names at the start of this year, and again, I mentioned, I think earlier, it's over 400. I think it's about 450. So they're housing about 80 veterans a month right now. But through this process of this by name list, which there's weekly meetings in which they go through that list, and they're looking at the most chronic and critical first, and then moving through that list. So, and this is done regionally with many partners, and Mesa has been very much a part of that, of those roundtable meetings, and even Mary serves on the task force that looks at that. But we're looking not just at the by name list, but how quickly we can get veterans into housing is another indicator, and also how many are returning, dropping off the list and then returning. So they're looking at multiple aspects of working with veterans and just trying to fill the gaps. I think one of the things we're learning is how we can transition veterans who might be in other programs that are needing more of that higher level program, like our VASH program. So they're looking at how to transition those that are in transitional type programs. Rapid Rehousing, SSVF, is another acronym for a VA program that serves veteran families and individuals. So in short, there's a lot of work, very intensive work that's happening regionally.
Great, thank you. Council, any additional questions for these ladies? Okay, thank you again for the great job you're doing. The next item on our agenda is related to this. It's a resolution approving and authorizing the chairperson of this board to enter into the First Amendment to the Mesa Public Housing Authority intergovernmental agreements for the Housing Choice Voucher Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing also known as VASH program. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Glover and Mr. Luna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Mr. Glover. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you.